What's up? This is Brandon Smitley, BrandonSmitley.com, bringing you another warm-up explanation, but for my upper body training. So I recently did one on my lower, also doing one on my upper body, so kind of explaining things, why I do them, and how it gets me warmed up for the session at hand. This day, pretty normal compared to the lower. There's some minor modifications towards the end, so I always start with some foam rolling. I put a little bit more time in my back and my lats, considering I'm going to be benching. Then you'll also see me do some T-spine extensions after I get the back kind of going. Definitely an area that I need more of. I have a pretty solid arch, but towards my T-spine lumbar junction, my extension isn't the best, so I put a little bit of time into that, and then go on to my lats, and then also move on to my lower body. If you're wondering why I do my lower body, you'll see a lot of people, they cramp, have some issues with their hamstrings, IT bands, when they bench, especially if they tuck or if they get incredibly tight. So this is to try to help prevent that, make sure that those are lengthened so I can get an optimal arch. Also focusing on the hip flexors and quads before I bench, because the hip flexors are tied with how well you're able to arch that lumbar and hip complex. And so if that's looser, you're able to get a little bit more T-spine extension. So when you arch, you should be able to get a little bit better of an arch. So it also prevents some low back issues as well from benching. So I think that's something that people don't really kind of take into account, is how that all ties in together, and keeping that healthy and able to get the greatest amount of range of motion that you can about that joint is going to limit your range of motion in your press when you bench. So take that into consideration. It's something you're not doing, at least give it a try. I mean, just add it into your basic foam roll routine. It takes like an extra minute or two, and you may end up finding that kind of helps. And then going on to that, you're going to see that I go here into the split stance holds like I did in the lower body warm-up as well. So again, point behind that is to lengthen those hip flexors and get them to relax so I'm able to arch better. So that ties into the foam rolling aspect, but also the hip flexors are just really bound up in majority of powerlifters, because it's what our sport kind of entails, is that anterior pelvic tilt to be successful. But at the same time, from an injury prevention standpoint and staying healthy, it's good to keep those hip flexors lengthened, and so that's why I also throw it in on my upper body days. And in a way, it also kind of lets you make sure that your legs are fresh from session to session. I basically hit a lower body day 2 days before this, and 2 days later I'm going to end up hitting another lower body day. So I know that if I can keep that at least decently recovered and fresh, I'm going to feel better the next following day when I go to train. So it all kind of ties in together. I don't really try to look at the body as just strictly upper and lower, and how it integrates itself between all three lifts, because all three lifts are technically a full body. Go to some band shoulder dislocations. Basically just go back and forth. I like the band because it helps pull your chest open, and this just kind of gets the shoulder capsule warm, gets your delts firing as well, going back and forth. And then I do some alternating dislocations as well, so one arm and then the other. That kind of helps with retracting the scapula a little bit, and then focusing on one arm at a time, going in and out both ways. So pretty basic stuff. I mean, the actual warm-up isn't anything too crazy yet. Then I still go into some overhead squats, but I use the band here rather than the dowel rod. That way it helps pry my chest open a little bit better, keep my shoulders warmed up. I usually do these in flat-soled shoes on on bench or upper body days. So my squat still is not the best, but doing this gets my heart rate elevated, again gets me warm, make sure my hips are still warm, so when I arch, and make sure all that together is still loose, and I feel good on the bench. I don't want my hips cramping and all that stuff, which I mentioned. a few minutes ago. Then go into some push-ups, the downward dog. Sorry, the idea for this is to get the triceps, delts, pecs basically all firing, and then that extension gets a good stretch on the hamstrings, but then also lengthens the lats and ties everything together, so also gets the trunk firing a little bit. Basically talking to some training partners about stuff in between while I was filming, but going on here that I'm going into some rolling planks. I just do a set of 20, so basically 10 on each side. The idea here, you'll notice it kind of can get you out of breath, so it gets your heart rate elevated, rolling back and forth. Makes you focus on keeping those abs tight. I was a little bit lackluster this day, not going to lie. I was kind of in a rush, believe it or not. I actually did this once, and I didn't hit record on my camera, so I kind of ran through it a little quick. But the idea is to make sure those obliques are firing, and then rolling back and forth on the shoulder like that, builds some shoulder stability, and gets the rotator cuffs going. So that's really all I've got. Then I roll into some dumbbell benching for some warm-ups, and I'm good to go. That's all I've got. Thanks for checking in. As always, you can keep with all my stuff over on EliteFTS.com.